All right, thanks everyone for sticking around. As you can tell, this is the Fireside Chat. It's now official. We hope to create kind of a great atmosphere to have a little casual conversation. And my hypothesis going into this whole thing was that no one really knows the story of ski. You all have little versions of it. You were here for some period of time, and even Chris and I were here for a long time. We have our little versions of it. But I thought if we could assemble a group like this, we could get enough different perspectives of the story of ski that we might be able to come to some more complete understanding of it. And these are, I think there's some obvious questions that we're all dying to know answers to. Like we want to know from our former president, provost, and dean, Dave Pershing, what was the most annoying thing that we came to him with? Like what was the craziest idea that he had to bail us out of or guide us correctly out of? That was really an important one. And then from Chris, of course, it was, what was the motivation? What brought this whole thing together, and what was his, driving idea, behind it? And Greg, of course, Greg had, I remember this well, had the most precise job description, I think, of anyone ever. And he will tell us about that, I hope. But what's more important, we really want to know from Greg, like, who was the better boss? Former Governor John Huntsman or Chris? Because he's worked with both. Okay, so we're going to get some interesting perspectives, I think, from all these various people. And so I'm Rob MacLeod, and I was there from the beginning too, and I have my bias story, but I want to hear from these other three about their perspectives. And so I've asked them to to come and tell us, just like I say, about how they saw the development of ski, and I thought if, we'll start with some questions to each one of them individually, in which they can maybe tell us what their role was in the whole genesis and development of ski. And we'll start with our former president Dave Pershing to give us some sense of how he saw ski develop, what his role was in that process.
Well, I think it's funny to start with me because I had only a very minor role, and I don't want to have any ambiguity about that. You, Chris, Chuck, and all the ski faculty did the heavy lifting. And there's no question that throughout the years, there was a lot of heavy lifting. What I tried to do is to be open-minded, admit I didn't really know this field very well, and support in every way I could think of. Obviously, partly that was to deal with the bureaucracy and the administration kind of hassles that were inevitable in this kind of a situation. I tried to help in that way. And then during U-Star, I had the potential to add actual positions within ski. And I was glad to do that because I knew that Chris and the team would go out and hire people who would be successful and would help us in the overall program. But my role was minor.
In what ways do you think ski helped the university, or did we help? Maybe we were more of a problem than I don't know.
No, there's no question you helped the university, because I think probably the most important thing was you helped bring absolutely amazing faculty. And that would be true for senior people like Valerio and Martin and Ross, and junior people like Mike and Sarong and Orly, and then all of the young people that we saw this morning who I don't even know. And then we also attracted some people that we didn't hold on to, and I feel bad about that. But I can talk more about that a little later on. But certainly one was the faculty. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Mm. And then there's the whole issue of students. In the David Evans era, we were able to recruit absolutely outstanding graduate students, some of whom knew they were outstanding, and some of whom I've talked to that didn't really think they were that great. But they went on to be real leaders across the country in this new field. I mean, John Warnock, Ed Catmull, there's a whole list of people like that. And I think ski has done the same thing. You have attracted really brilliant students. And when I look out at you, some of you, I suspect, know you're going to go do great things. Others of you probably don't know for sure what's going to happen, but you will. And so there's no question ski did that for the university and for the college.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. So, Chris, tell us sort of, your small role, like Dave's, right? Small role. And you know, what motivated you? What were the guiding principles, or if you had any at the time? And how did it take off?
Yeah, so it's so I was now, I guess I call myself now the founding director. So
Mm.
because now we've made a successful transition and have a great new director. And so I was the founding director from the beginning and did it for almost 25 years. uh, and uh, and learned a huge amount about how to how to create a working, a strong working environment, and and somehow, I wouldn't say manage people, but to get really strong-willed, smart people to work together, and build something where the the sum of the parts were greater than the individual pieces. And it started just with me and Rob, working on a research project together, and having to learn all these different skills and just starting our careers really in terms of being assistant professors and having graduate students and going out and writing grant proposals and papers and things. And I think that there was a sequence of events that happened that caused us to grow faster than we had anticipated. So I think when I started out as an assistant professor, I think I was 5 for 5 in my first grant proposals. I was 100% hit rate. And so that which is unheard of now. I don't think it's possible now, given the funding rates that they had. But at that time, we were very successful with all of our initial funding. And what that happened was it meant we had to hire more people, more graduate students, more postdocs, more staff, et cetera, and we grew actually quite quickly. And that caused its own problems where I became the bottleneck for everything, and started to think about structure and things. But it was through that process of, I think, growth and thinking about the different aspects of the interdisciplinary research we were doing, which had this geometric modeling, the image analysis, the computer simulation, and the data visualization all together, is that we couldn't do all of this ourselves, and that we wanted to find people we were always collaborative, and we wanted to find other people to work with us. And that's when I think the idea of growing the then group, we became in 1996 a state center of excellence. So we became the center of ski. And soon after that, we got 2 national centers, a Department of Energy National Center and an NIH National Center. And we wanted to grow with these other amazing people. And it was always getting the very best people. I'll come back to that later. But that was when I think we started really thinking about, we need more faculty, and who are these faculty, and what areas were they going to be in. And and certainly one of my guiding principles was, we want the very smartest, best people that we can get who collaborate effectively with each other. That was a big thing. And I mean, for me, my recruiting strategy was, you had to be smarter than me to get into the ski. And that's been really a good thing in terms of and then once you get that person, you want to get the people who are smarter than them, and it just has built upon itself, where we have these just amazingly smart and collaborative people. And that's how ski started and has continued.
Yeah, very good. Greg, how in the world did you end up at Ski?
Let's do. I can't even turn on the microphone. There we go. So Chris said it. He hires smarter than he is. That's how I No, I was actually in industry when I got a call from a friend who Chris called, and a friend and I had postdoc together, and we were working together at Storage Tech. And Chris called him and said, "Hey, you should take this job of associate director in our research group." And then Brom called me and said, "Hey, I've got a real job. You should take this job." So I interviewed at Ski, and I found this, really dynamic young group growing really fast, hit rates 100%. I thought bureaucracy is what they need next, right? And I can add that. But honestly, my background was always collaborative science from industry postdocs and such, always in different domains. So seeing this research group that wanted to do collaborative science across multiple disciplines was like a godsend in my career. So meeting the group when I interviewed, and I remember the email I sent back saying, thanks for the interview. And I called it an eclectic group, and I misspelled eclectic. And I thought, oh, that should give them a good signal of what they're going to get. But the group was like glue. It was just so attractive to be part of this mission and to figure out how to celebrate all these different smart people. And at the same time you celebrate one, raise the whole group up at the same time. And what a fun challenge that was. And I think I successfully slowed SCI down with the bureaucracy. So I think I've added my part also.
Now, is that why you left us to go to slow the bureaucracy of the state down for a while as the governor's science advisor?
Okay. So if a governor says to me, would you be my science advisor?
Mhm.
That's weird, right? So you got to say yes. You can't say no to that. Yeah. So that just seemed like such a crazy opportunity
Mhm.
that you couldn't not do it, right? 'Cause
Right,
it's
right.
completely unexpected. I came to Chris and I said, Chris, I'm one of the candidates for state science advisor. What should we do? And Chris is like, well, you're not going to get that job. Are you crazy? So we didn't even think it was real when Huntsman said yes. Yeah. So, but it was a fun transition.
Okay,
But I came back
you did.
yeah,
That was
yeah,
the good news for us. You did come back for a while, anyway.
for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're also in an interesting position because you have had government experience, industry experience throughout your career, and then academic experience. And so there's some sort of big picture observations you can make. Just when you think
Yeah.
about, where should and which technology belongs where, and what's the real relative role of those three organizations?
It's a really good question. I was listening to the panel just before on AI, right? And the company I'm at now does some AI stuff.
A little bit.
And so the government employee said, and I pictured myself as a bureaucratic government employee when I was science advisor. So I don't say
Yeah.
that in a diminutive way. We can't make mistakes with AI because people trust us. And I thought, well, if I'm calling the state for tax advice, I know already I've got a certain error rate I'm engaging with
Mhm.
humans,
Mhm.
right? So our AI is actually going to be worse than the tax representative I talked to at the state. So the state actually isn't great at asking those questions, right? Those hard questions. How good are we?
Yeah.
Do we deserve the trust our citizens give us?
Yeah.
Generally, probably not,
Mhm.
right? Because there's human mistakes in the state. So groups like SCI have to take these technologies and ramp into them and do that comparison and say, hey, you've got an autonomous vehicle and let's do radiology. Okay,
Mhm.
I'm using AI to do judgments on tumors on MRIs. Well, doctors miss tumors. Do the AIs miss more tumors? What does that mean to AI, and when do we fully engage AI, and when do doctors play a more advisory role to the AIs rather
Right.
than vice versa?
Right.
It's really hard for a hospital to ask that question.
Mhm.
It's really hard for a state or a government to ask that question. SCI institutes have to ask those questions.
Right.
And they have to be earnest when they put the answers out and say, this is the whole point of tenure. I'm going to say something that everyone's going to disagree with,
Mhm.
but it's true.
Mhm.
Right. And that's what these multidisciplinary scientists challenge each other with different disciplinary thoughts. That's what it means is just government needs this.
Yeah,
It needs
yeah,
us to come out with our tenure and say things that aren't popular, but are, as best we know, true.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
No, I agree. That's the academic mission
Mhm.
in a nutshell. Yeah, let's go back to Dave again. I'm curious, sort of in the context of SCI, what I really do want to know, like, what were the challenges that we presented to the university administration as you saw it? I mean, both in your role and, in your broader knowledge of the university administration, like, why were we different or problematic or?
Well, you were certainly different at the beginning. And you've got to remember that in the beginning of the SCI era, this was a period when the College of Engineering had total research budgets that were 5 million, 7 million, 10 million. And so here came along this entity that was suddenly hitting 5 for 5. There's no question that SCI in some ways set a new bar a new higher bar on what, first of all, what was possible, what could happen if a group of faculty got together, because that wasn't too common. And frankly, even later in history, many colleges have had trouble achieving that idea of faculty getting together and collaborating. So that was one thing. There's no question that SCI upped our research totals. As dean, I was very happy to see that, of course, right? It made me look good for having done nothing. So it was great. There's also no doubt that Chris and you and the team were willing to help me both on the legislative side and on the private development side. I knew that if I went to an alumni event and announced that I would be speaking, which would bring nobody, that Chris was going to be speaking, showing these amazing slides and videos, the room would be full. And that turns out to be important because donors like to invest in success. Selling failure doesn't work very well. And I know that. So I want to be thankful about that. There's no question you helped me in all of my different positions in that way. And that was also true when I would have donors come to the university, to the college, and want to see what we were doing. I nearly always arranged for them to go somewhere and to see a SCI faculty member or Chris, and that was always successful. That was great. So it really helped me raise external funds.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to talk about the really big challenge, the issue that got me sort of in trouble?
Well, I was going to intervene and say, and I remember one of the challenges you helped us so much with, and that was the audacious idea that when we were helping with the design of the Warnick Engineering Building, that we actually wanted glass, right? Buildings back then didn't have much glass. They had little tiny windows. And you'll notice that with Dave's help, we were able to put lots of glass in the upper floors, at least, of the Warnick Engineering Building, and that those glass walls are now the definitive standard, I would argue, for every building that's come up on campus since then.
That's absolutely true. And let me give you credit for, first of all, helping raise the money, both with the governor, with Mike, and also with John, frankly.
Yeah.
And then there was the whole idea that they wanted their part of the building to be rather different than the rest of the building. I mean, we all wanted the glass. That was, I personally liked that.
Yeah.
But in your part of the building, it's exposed ceilings,
Yeah.
right? And in the end, I just decided that you knew better about what you needed than I did. And so I went with it.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that I did.
And we're very grateful indeed. Yeah. Yeah, indeed.
So probably the biggest and certainly the most controversial challenge that I faced from SCI is a more subtle one. And that was, who was SCI going to report to? In the beginning, when I was dean, it made easy sense for SCI to report to the dean of engineering because there were faculty in SCI from multiple departments. So that wasn't too controversial. But then I sort of backed into being the senior vice president provost. And Chris had this idea that he should stay with me, right? And so I agreed to continue to be the sponsor, the person for whom SCI would report. And that went along for about 14 years that way, actually. And then I made the mistake of becoming president because some of the big donors and senior faculty talked me into it. Anyway, well, then Chris came and said, yes, we really want to stay with you. And I said, well, wait a minute. Presidents, no, centers and institutes don't report to presidents. But he didn't like that answer. Not at all, actually. And so we had a couple discussions, and eventually I went to the vice president for research, which was the brilliant Tom Parks, and said, look, what are we going to do about this? Because that was a much more logical place. But it turned out he had worked with several institutes and was sort of involved with them. And so in the end, we agreed that what would happen during my presidency was that I would stay with SCI and EGI and the combustion group, and Tom would take the biological science medical institutes and centers. And we did that. Now, do I think that's a general model? Absolutely not. I don't think our current president would go for that model for himself. But for me and for Tom, it worked well. I hope it worked well for ski. But that was certainly the most controversial thing.
Interesting. It was definitely good for us. I don't think there's any question there. So Chris, how about you? What do you think some of the biggest challenges were that you can recall?
Well, certainly it was our interdisciplinary nature in the
Yeah.
beginning of how do you make this interdisciplinary thing work in a traditional university setting where there are silos of departments and colleges, and we are the cross-cutting interdisciplinary research institute, and there weren't really any things like that. Back in that day, I think interdisciplinary research was being touted as, the next big thing. We all need to do interdisciplinary research and education, but there were no models for how to successfully do that in a university. And I think Dave saw us as a good experiment of we could use ski as a way to see how we might find a structure that worked. And so the challenges were trying to figure out how to actually make that happen. And that we tried multiple things that did not work early on in terms of how we were going to do faculty appointments and things like that. And it was certainly challenging to talk to the departments into thinking that this interdisciplinary research institute might be a good idea. What's in it for them? It seems like there's only a certain amount of funding available and faculty slots, and if you guys are getting some, then we're not. And it was a fixed pot, and I think that we had to come up with a structure that was a win-win situation for the departments and for ski, and to also see that it wasn't a fixed pot. This was an investment that made the pot bigger for everybody, and it could be a win-win situation. I think that Dave worked very hard with us to try and find these win-win situations between making us the institute successful, at the same time making it a win and positive for the departments. But with each department we added a faculty member in, it was a long conversation with the chair of that department and often with the entire faculty of that department of, well, how is this going to work? That you're going to have this faculty in ski, but they're also going to be a professor in our department, and so those conversations happened a lot. And then finally, we did it a while, and thankfully, the people we hired were very successful, and then that seemed to click. And I think it was bioengineering. It was Rick Rabbit when he was the chair of bioengineering when we first had our first bioengineering faculty with them, and he figured, he got it right away. It was like, this is great because we're getting free faculty slots of these amazing people. We're not giving them any space or any administrative support. So we should get as many ski faculty as we possibly can. And so I think bioengineering they were the ones that they were very smart in terms of putting their arms around us and saying that ski is, I remember, I think it might have been Rick, when he was describing the different laboratories of ski and of bioengineering to some visitors, and he came upon ski and he says, and the Ski Institute is one of our larger laboratories. And so it was just like, yeah, this is all good. That's just, we'll claim it all. So that worked out well, and I think that was a great attitude.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it definitely has been challenging, to make this interdisciplinary research work across the university, and but it has.
Yeah. Excellent. And of course, Greg, how about you? I mean, other than slowing us down, what do you think was that must have been hard. Big challenge.
It was.
Yeah.
You guys were pretty fast moving
Yeah,
research group,
yeah.
but I think I did my work. No, I think when you think of having Dave's support up through his graduation of his career to president, and you think of Chris's relentless pursuit for talent, and what that means is every package that recruited a faculty member in had to be different. and you didn't have 2 years to make that different package. You had months to win that recruitment battle. So that was a call to the president, right? Help me make this package work. And Dave always showed up and said, so that relentless pursuit of talent, which is one of Chris's guiding talents and his pride points, is critical. But you can't get that talent if you don't have the support of the whole administration. So why not just report to the president, which is a clever move, right? But we also did that. We also did that with the whole institute, right? So we had a caretaker of our building, a janitor, who was really, really good, really cared about our space. And I was talking to him one day and he said, I'm going to transfer to another building because I get $2 an hour more. And I called his manager and I said, hey, we will pay the $2 an hour more. Leave him here with us. Manager said, that's not going to work. You can't pay. And I said, the next call that you get, if you don't say yes, will be from Dave Pershing, right? And that's how we got that janitor to stay. So, I mean, this pursuit of excellence. I didn't think of it. Chris did. So I just tried to ape him, was do it at all levels, right? So staff members, if they need a raise to stay in ski, and I can provide, and by doing that, we can provide a really stable administrative structure for people to get grants as quickly as possible. Let's raise that salary. If it's outside the university norms to some degree, don't care. We want to provide this atmosphere of really stable administrative support. So, so a bureaucracy, but a stable bureaucracy, right? Because we had to keep that gas pedal regulated.
Yeah.
And we did it by hiding the fact we were regulating you guys. We just said it's more quality.
Now I understand.
Yeah. So it was a bait and switch.
I had
But-
no idea at the time.
But that relentless pursuit of excellence, the relentless pursuit of give that excellence a place to really do their work, and then having the administration support that in such a robust way was what I think were the magic elements of ski. Aside from, we got great people, right?
And good
Was
coffee.
the number, and good coffee. And good coffee. Yeah, it will not work where there's not espresso. That was
you
the
go.
problem. That's why only 2 years at the state.
There
Yeah.
I knew that would be something important like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, when I look back at my own career, I cannot help but be reminded of how much ski has mattered and affected my own career. And so I'm curious to see how the rest of you feel about that and aspects of your own career paths, trajectories we all did our part and contributed to ski, but what did we get back? Like how did it shape us as researchers, as administrators, and how did it move us in our careers? So maybe Dave, you could.
Jim Collins, in his book, Good to Great, says that the first step, in some ways the most important step, is you have to get the right people on the bus. And one of the things that Chris taught me very clearly, very early on, was that is absolutely true. That in the end, you have to get the right people on the bus. And he was so good at that, as has already been mentioned, at recruiting people. And this is, I don't know if I can say this, Chris, you and I had a hire no jerks rule. And that's kind of true, I think. You have to hire people not only who are brilliant and creative and driven, but who will work together, who will work with each other, particularly in these big interdisciplinary centers. And so I tried to use those ideas that I learned from watching him in other places with other centers. Actually, you once suggested to me that I saw ski as a template for large research institutes. Well, I don't actually think I was that clever. I don't know that I could have said that, but there's no question that I did see the way ski was run and the way it worked, and tried to inspire those same ideas in other centers that I was working with, other centers and institute. And there's no question that that works out, that you have figured out the right formula to make it work.
Excellent, thank you. Chris, how has this small little enterprise affected your career?
Yes, well, none of this was planned in the beginning.
Oh, totally, no.
And kind of took a life of its own, and and importance of its own along the way. And I think in the beginning, it was all about me in terms of my being a successful, getting tenure, and being a successful young professor and having a successful career. And so there was definitely a lot of trying to be a successful young career person. And then at some point, I think I got to the point where I had been personally successful. And then I transitioned that to being about trying to make everyone else in ski successful in terms of wanting to support their careers and, what could I do to help them be successful? What is it that I could do? And is it, could I shield them from some bureaucratic thing? Could I, whatever it was, could I write letters for them for awards? Was it a small amount of money that I could support or seed something with, or, whatever it was. And I think that transition really gave me a tremendous amount of satisfaction in terms of my own career path. And what I found to be really rewarding overall was seeing the success of everybody here and beyond. And that has just made, yesterday when I was sitting at the reception desk welcoming people coming in, it was just so rewarding to see all of these people who had been through ski and the talking about the great careers that they had and their families and everything. And I just felt wonderful about that. And I also think in terms of it increased my own impact in the world just multifold than if I had just been a single researcher that, had my own research group and had, a few graduate students and postdocs and had my, 1 or 2 grants at a time and published my X number of papers a year. And I'm sure I could have been happy with that and done some nice work. But in terms of the impact that I was able to multiply what I was able to do, the thousands of, papers that have been published by ski faculty and students and postdocs, and the, hundreds of PhD students who have graduated, and the amazing work that the faculty have done. So I think that by sitting in that chair as director for a while, I was just able to multiply whatever much smaller impact I would have had individually into a much bigger way. And that's also been very rewarding.
Yeah, indeed. It's a good summary. How about you, Greg? Yes.
Ski gave me a career I certainly didn't deserve, right? So I've always, yeah, that's absolutely true. So it gave me the confidence to weather the question of what do you do here? Right. And I've never answered that. Right. And at NVIDIA, people go, what is it that you do here? And I look at the teams I work with, I look at the individuals of those teams and find the holes to help those individuals accelerate their careers and do their work. And that's what I do. I don't know what is needed oftentimes. Oftentimes it means I just need to sit in my office, drink coffee, and let people come by and chat through things. But it's given me the confidence to be that type of manager,
Right.
I think, right?
Right.
So, and then you get to be around excellence like ski, and NVIDIA is a great place, and I published with Nobel laureates, and it's just crazy what you get to do if you have the confidence to go, I'm just going to do what the group needs, right? I don't need to be the Nobel laureate. I don't need to be the governor, whatever. I don't need to be Chris Johnson, but I do need to help Chris Johnson's group do what the vision he's laid out do.
Right.
And to have the confidence to just do that and not worry about your career is what ski gave me.
Right.
That feeling of safety and
Yeah.
ability to do that type of job where people go, what
Yeah.
do you do here?
Yeah.
And we never did answer that question.
I know.
At ski.
We
No,
debated
we
it
never
very
got
well.
there.
Yeah.
But you did that very, very well, and it was an incredibly and important and integral part to the success of ski. You downplay your impact tremendously, and you do it very well. But you are incredibly important to the success of ski.
Best meanderer that you can possibly hire. That is exactly right.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this is sort of, this growth that we hopefully have in our careers where we do gain confidence, but we also along the way, kind of let go of our egos a little bit. We don't have to be the smartest. We don't have to be always the leader in every aspect
Yeah.
of what goes on, but we all become contributors. We all become citizens of the Institute. And,
Yeah, and being able to be proud of that as a group.
right, right.
And sometimes, you Ross would do this. He gets the label of lead on this one,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Mike does this. He gets the label of lead.
Yeah.
And one of the most special things about ski is I got to follow Chris to a lot of presentations, and we'd walk off stage, or Chris would walk off stage. I'd stand next to him, and people were like, "Aren't you the guy that stands next to the Viking all the time?" But I got to see Chris present a lot, and so when Chris presented his research, right, Chris Johnson, Ski Institute, there was almost no way to find Chris's research in there, right? He presented Rob's research, Mike's research, Ross's research, Chuck's research. He presented everybody as the star, and being part of that and having that representative. I mean, you were diamond for what most of your time at ski on Delta. And so we had this Viking salesman running around truly believing that everybody's work was the most important in ski. And that
Mhm,
really
mhm.
built that kind of community
Yeah, yeah.
and ability to celebrate all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Now, you may have the impression that everything went perfectly and we didn't make a single mistake along the way. But I bet each of us could think back to maybe something we might have done a little bit differently.
The cabinets in the ski conference room.
They were terrible.
The first cabinet, this
They were
attention to
awful.
detail,
Yeah,
Chris
yeah.
Johnson, would
Yeah.
drive you absolutely
Yeah.
nuts. I put the wrong cabinets in with the wrong look and feel, right? And Chris had a look and feel. And he's like, those got to go. Those got to go. I was like, that's like $5,000-6,000, and that was early on. So
Yeah,
that was a lot.
right.
That was our first remodel.
Yeah, we hid them in the
That's it.
library or something.
Chris, we're stuck with those, and he's like, we are not. You and the cabinets need to go. And so we got rid of the cabinets.
Yeah.
And he brought Katie in, and Katie, he goes, Katie, what do you think of these cabinets? Katie goes, and I'm like, please say they're good. She goes, those are tacky. I was like, "No." So every mistake we hit was, cabinets were as important as recruiting packages,
Yeah.
right? And that's a key to this,
Yeah, the details matter.
the cabinets.
Either of the other two of you willing to admit to any things you might do differently?
Coffee machine incident?
Which one? There was no worse disaster at ski than when the coffee machine went out. I mean, all the email traffic all morning was, who's doing the next coffee run? I'm taking orders. Chris, any?
There's just too many. Boy, I'll say, actually, I think personally, the thing I think I made the biggest mistake on was taking on being director of the School of Computing while I was director of the Ski Institute, when we were growing so quickly and there was so much to do. And each of those jobs was like an 80-hour, a week job. And there were only 168 hours in a week. And so that only gave me 8 hours of not doing something. And it wasn't enough. And so I think that personally, that was the worst time. My biggest mistake was thinking I could handle both of those jobs at the same time, which I absolutely could not. And I think certainly ski suffered during those times. I certainly suffered, and everybody around me suffered. I was, because I had that. So that was my biggest mistake.
Yeah, no, I remember it well. And not in a good way.
I will mention it's a really active mistake, right? And that's where skis. So, when I came back from the state, I pushed on a lot of grants to engage the community more. I don't know that was the right thing for ski to do. I felt like we should get into the state, help the industries more. It was really juxtaposed with our mission. So, but those active mistakes, that they're hard on everybody, but they're really where you define your mission. You really kind of, it's taking the annealing the sword.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Really,
yeah.
really getting that edge. So
Yeah.
without those types of mistakes, you don't come back to ski and go, this is what I was meant to do, right? This is where it's at.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we always took risks and then learned from. I mean, we weren't afraid to try new, crazy, maybe ideas, but we didn't stick to them when they weren't working out.
Yeah, just 30% too long. Yeah, but we did let them go and then learn from them. Yeah,
Exactly,
absolutely.
exactly. I think that's a big part of it. So I'd hope we'd have massive amounts of university leadership here and be able to give them some wisdom going forward, but we at least have Manish here. So what are some, words of for the future and for the people who still are at ski and have to build the next 30 years of ski? What would each of you suggest as kind of guidance or tips or?
I would say a couple things. One of the things I learned as provost and president is that it's clear these great big institutes are only going to succeed with a dynamic visionary leader. If you look around the campus, so Chris with Ski, Mary Beckerly and HCI, Randy Olson and Moran, there's plenty of examples. But the thing that's not obvious is that that leader has to recognize these are service roles at the root of them. That in the end, and frankly, this is true of being provost and president, you've got to be worrying about your faculty. And one of the things that most impressed me about Chris was that he was willing to think about what his faculty really wanted. Yes, sometimes it was money. Clearly that was important to some people, but it wasn't important. That wasn't the most important thing to everybody. He was willing to think about what was really critical for them and what would make them both successful and happy. He was great at getting his faculty nominated for awards and then celebrating them once you won. And those kinds of characteristics are the things I think that make these big institutes really successful and great. Now, I hope that the university administration recognizes that we need to support big centers and institutes. It's clear that's the future in many ways. While I was the senior vice president, I was PI and director, thanks in part to Chris, of a $42 million NNSA DOE program for 13 years. Ski and the faculty in Ski were critical. Chris and Martin and Mike and many others. We would never have won without them. But we could also not have won without the university supporting us in the Institute and making sure that we did what we had, the resources we needed to win against very strong competitors. And I certainly hope they will continue to do that in the future.
Yeah, as we do too. Chris.
Yeah, I was hoping that all our senior administration would be here.
That was my plan too, but it didn't quite work out.
Yeah. Dave's opening comment was entirely false. I want to tell you that he played an enormous role
Yes.
in the success of Ski and absolutely, if without Dave, I don't think Ski would have been successful. And a number of external advisory boards for research centers and institutes around the world. And I have seen most of them fail. And it was because they did not have the administrative support. They didn't have the right structure. They were these kind of top-down. Vice president for research says we need a new institute in this. Here's some faculty slots. You go and do it or something, and then there wasn't long-term support, or there was just not the right structure there. They weren't able to report to a provost or a vice president for research, and the continued support of dean and provost and pro for our success. So I talk about the golden age of Dave Pershing, and we were very fortunate to have had most of our careers during that golden age because it was very, very important to what we did. And the administration is all new right now, newish. And the things that I see are that I wish they would look more carefully at what has been done to create the success of places like SCI, but other places on campus, and figure out that, understand that a lot of thought and work and experience has gone into making that success, and that making changes for the sake of just changes or some efficiency, or one size fits allness, is not necessarily in the best interest of the future success of the university, because as hard fought as it was, and as long, and the investment that the university has put into us, it could all go away in not too much time without that continued support and success. So I wish the administration, I hope they will actually spend some more time finding out about the history of, what was it that created SCI, and why was it successful, and the mechanisms and policies that were put into place, and think about those carefully before making changes.
Yeah. That's a good point. Greg, how would you slow down the bureaucracy even better?
Yeah, but it's such a, so we've, I was asked many times by a variety of research organizations how to tell us the secret recipe of SCI, and it's so hard, as a president of a university, right? You see a Chris Johnson, he's this aggressive faculty member, he's obviously sharp. How do you see that piece of the people part that he wants to build a faculty that he celebrates? How do you see a careerist with this magical piece of let's build a community, right? That recipe is relatively unique, right? It's really, so how do you find that? I look over at Will and I think, how do you find Will to start a kitware who's going to build this community? So finding these leaders and putting your money on the right horse is even more important than structure. Structure is great, right? But how do you find these unicorn individuals that will be relentless, drive people absolutely nuts, and support people to their highest possible success rates, right? That's, for me, it's a really magical recipe. I haven't figured it out, right? I work for a unicorn, and how the CEO of NVIDIA, it's unique like these guys, and it's how did NVIDIA get lucky enough that the venture capitalists saw this crazy guy that would also build community in NVIDIA that's really unbelievable, right? So these unicorns that aren't complete jerks are complete jerks. I'm not saying there's not jerks in them a little bit, but how do you find these people to lead these groups is I think the hardest part.
Yeah. Very good. All right. I'm not sure you've answered all the questions you have, so there's just a few minutes left. If any of you have questions of this esteemed group, it's a good time to ask them. Any curiosity? Yes, Fred.
Yeah, I'd like to quiz you due to your immense expertise, about the downside of embarking on the road of responsible AI. So I like the road, I'm sold on it, but I want to ask myself also, are we doing something wrong at the same time? What might be a downside? So are we, for example, preventing unleashing the power of AI? So Chris might tell us, don't tie my hands like that. Greg might tell us, oh, I need to slow you down. But I'm wondering that, I mean, if I think of AI as a kid, initially it's good to manage the kid, teach some responsibility to the kid. But at some point we either let the kid take off, or we lose something big.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what you think about this aspect.
Yeah, and we can, just to paraphrase it slightly, you're asking a general question. I mean, AI is the current question, but along the way, there's been many technologies, some of which have been great for humanity and great for us, and some not so much. And how does an institute decide which technologies to support and how to do it responsibly? So how would you answer that, Chris? So clearly you.
This is why I hired Manish as the next director. Because he knows a lot more about this than I do. That has all those answers. No, but I guess my answer is it's just kind of a general one, is that with all new technologies, there are uses for good and evil, and there's been, in the past, I think with every new technology, there's been a worry that it's going to be used for evil. For example, the printing press and, giving people books that are the general populace. How could that be a good thing? That's terrible. You want to keep the books only for these few people of power and scholarship and things. And well, that certainly didn't play out well. But I think with all of these technologies, there's the two-sided coin, and that it's up to us to work hard in order to find the ways that we can use it for the most positive good. And mistakes will be made along the way, no doubt. But that if we keep focusing on the positive parts of it, I'm hopeful that will win out in the end, in terms of we'll end up doing much more positive good than we will on the ill side.
Yeah, if I can just jump in, I think that's a great answer. And I think what I said before about being willing to take risks, but always being sure to be informed. A lot of things fail for the wrong reasons. They fail because of prejudice. They fail because of ignorance. And especially we as scientists owe it to any new technology to examine it closely, with as close to an open mind as we can muster, and then help the society ultimately to decide which parts to embrace and which parts to limit or constrain. But we have to do it in an informed way, and we can't build on ignorance.
But we can't stop asking questions, right? We
Exactly.
were all trained.
Exactly.
I'm a bureaucrat, but I was trained as a scientist, right? And you can't not ask the questions.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
That's the whole point of university. Exactly.
It's tricky, right? Because we say we want to have an interpretable solution.
Mhm.
But maybe AI is going to be much smarter than us. And just like Fourier, talking back about Shirin's comment earlier, so we're going to block AI because we don't understand what AI is doing, but AI may have found a theory that we have not unleashed yet, understood.
Exactly. Yes. Next question, please.
Yes, I thought it was very interesting to learn about the interdisciplinary faculty that SCI Institute kind of orchestrated. I'm just curious if SCI has changed the generic behavior of how faculty works across the university or even across the world, or if this is still a tight-knit thing that just has worked really well for SCI in general.
Yeah.
I can say a little bit about that in terms of, when I joined computer science back in 1990, I was the 16th faculty member of the Department of Computer Science. And I think Utah was more applied than, because we came out of an engineering school and because we came from this graphics, we were more applied than most other departments of computer science. But even then, what I was doing and what SCI was doing was really not, it was not really seen as computer science. So there were pieces of computer science, but wasn't really a core part of computer science. And so there was, definitely in the beginning, there was this kind of sense of one of our faculty members during a faculty meeting early on said, if you're using floating point, you're not a computer scientist. And it's like, whoa. Anyway, but so there was definitely a time when I was trying to get tenure that I was advised by the then faculty that I should not be spending time publishing in like journals of biomedical engineering or mathematics journals or medical journals. I need to publish in the IEEE transactions on X or the ACM transactions journals, so that those are the ones that are going to count for my tenure. These other ones, they're not really going to count. That has changed, and I think that SCI has helped that because we kept bringing in these amazing faculty who were leaders in their field research-wise, and that their scope of research was broader than the traditional computer science. And that, I think that we helped go from being a department of computer science to a school of computing, which is a much broader definition, more encompassing than, a traditional computer science outlook. And so I do think we've helped, at least locally, and I hope more so, show that, computing is a much broader effect, and that things like visualization are important to computer science and have computer science implications, et cetera. So I hope that's true.
Yeah. Well, if you look back at all the grants we've had with collaborators across the states, across the world, those were all multidisciplinary grants, right? So whether those institutes were impacting us or we were impacting them, that, it's two-way street. But we definitely took our multidisciplinary message out to other international researchers. And they brought it back to us, right? Or they started it. So that it's actually a larger body of work out there doing this type.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I agree. Jake, last question. Goes to Jake.
So you spoke a little bit about advice for Manish and for leadership levels, but you've also seen a lot of students and young faculty and staff come up through the ranks and seen some succeed and some fail. So I guess what would you say to the people who are at that stage? Like what do they need to do in the next 30 years to, based on finding good success in this environment?
Yeah. I'll say something, sure. I mean, I'm in the driver's seat here. Come on. No, I mean, you've heard it all day, really, from a number of speakers we've had, and young people recognizing both the challenges and the opportunities of a collaborative interdisciplinary setting in which interaction is so important. So that takes a certain skill. Some of us seem to have more of that skill, like Greg, some of us not so much, like me, and we have to learn how to interact with other people, step across disciplines, sit down with somebody and say, okay, tell me about this crazy project you're doing. Like, I've never heard of the brain. Tell them, like Dave Weinstein was talking, tell me about how the brain works. That's kind of how Dave learned about the brain, right? And if you can embrace that, then I think you'll just see fewer limits in your future careers, and you can end up starting your own company, working in academia, joining a larger company, transforming to some extent that larger company, taking that interdisciplinary idea. And so I think embracing those opportunities, resisting the easy temptation of saying, if I just shrink down in my own little world and do my computer science or my biomedical engineering or my electrical engineering, I'll get done faster, right? I'll get those 3 papers I need for my PhD faster. But try and expand out from that and realize that unique, I would argue. This is something we've learned over time too. The setting at SCI and a few other places like it are very special. And there aren't many places like it where you get exposed to so many different smart people. And if you embrace that and internalize that and make it your way, then I think you'll improve your chances toward the most important success of all, which is to be endlessly curious, endlessly finding the new spark, as Will did. And you'll have a career that makes you happy. And that's the most important goal in it.
I'm going to add a part that I learned early on. I think it was very, very critical to my success, and I think it's critical to everybody's success, and that is the learning to be an effective communicator, both orally and especially written. Because when I started out, I was not a very good writer. My wife is an outstanding writer, and in all of my early papers and proposals, she edited those with red pencils and sat down with me and told me why this sentence was weak and how to make it strong. And I was writing in passive voice and not active voice, and she taught me how to be a better writer and the importance of clear communication. And then I also was Greg saw me give, I hope, some decent talks over the years, but in the beginning I was not a good speaker. And I remember one of my first presentations, I had just been hired as a faculty member. We had this National Science Foundation Science and Technology Center And they were having their first 5-year review. Actually, I think Pat might have been even at this, and it was at Cornell, and Don Greenberg was the PI of this, and it was Cornell, Caltech, Utah, UNC, and Brown University. So the best places in computer graphics, but it was also a graphics and visualization center. And I was like I had just been hired, and I did visualization. So even though I was a first-year assistant professor, they flew me to Cornell to give a talk. And I remember in my practice talk, and I was not doing well. And Don Greenberg got up on the stage in my practice talk and stood there and talked to my slides that he'd never seen before and told me how to basically give my talk. And I spent all night practicing that talk. And I gave a reasonable talk, and it just really reinforced the importance of effective communication, both verbally and written. So all of you who are great programmers out there and can do mathematics and et cetera, please spend some time learning to write and communicate effectively.
I have to second that just because of Chris. So I walked Chris's slides decks to places Chris didn't go, so I would go there. And you'd see Chris give a talk, and there'd be a line of 10 people at the stage. As he stepped off, they go, "We have to work with you. Like, we can't not work with Ski." That talk was phenomenal. I'd give the same slide deck, and I'd look out, and people were asleep, right? They weren't there. And no one came up and said, "We have to work with you." So that being able to sell your group's research, communicate your group's research in a really meaningful way is day and night between success and not in my mind, right? And that's why I was an administrator and he was the director, because I mean, I'm not actually kidding about that. People would flock to his talks, exact same slides. I would copy his words and they would go, "We don't even trust this research. We don't." Yeah. So that's a really important piece of the puzzle. And I will also, don't do a job you're not interested in, and be interested in the job you're doing, right? So be entertained. Every job, I wasn't faculty. That would seem like maybe a career fail, spending most of your life at a university, not being faculty. I was fascinated by the work I did here, right? I really was interested. It entertained me. And so my career advice is be entertained by where you're going, what you're doing. If you're not being entertained, then you shouldn't be there. You should go somewhere else, right? So that might not work in a career, but that's how I did mine. Yeah. The curiosity thing Rob mentioned is huge.
All right, well, thank you all for your time and listening. Hopefully it was a little bit informative. Let's thank our wonderful guests here. And then we'll pass this to Manish for a few closing comments, I think. Closing comments, I think.
First, thank you very much for being here and being part of this tremendous celebration, both of everything Ski has achieved, but really setting us up for the next 30 years of Ski, right? We've heard bold visions of what we are looking at, and so hope you'll all be part of that and come back again when we celebrate that. So thank you. Please do keep in touch. And before you go, we want to take this opportunity to thank Chris and Rob for their vision, perseverance, hard work in getting Ski to where it was. So please come back on stage.